They always sleep fine until the night your name finally means something, not to the world, not to history, just to them, to the one who laughed a little too loud when you were humiliated, to the manager who said, company policy, to the friend who played neutral while you were bleeding. Funny thing about people, they don't remember what they did, they remember what you might do. Guilt is weak, fear is efficient. See, they never cared that you were hurting. They cared that you were quiet. Quiet people are supposed to stay predictable, numb, harmless, disposable. Then one day, you stop apologizing, and suddenly they can't sleep. Why? Because something finally clicked in that soft little brain of theirs. We didn't just hurt a loser. We trained a weapon. That's what they're replaying now. Not the moments they made you suffer, the moments you watched, calmly, carefully, collecting information like a patient little scientist of pain. You know what keeps them awake? The realization that you remember everything they forgot on purpose, every joke, every dismissal, every time they pulled rank, every time they told you, don't overreact, while they sharpened the knife a little deeper into your back. You didn't explode. You didn't scream. You just took notes. And every bully knows one universal truth: the quiet one with the notebook is the only one worth being afraid of. Because rage is obvious, humiliation is permanent. They thought your silence was defeat. They thought your compliance was weakness. They thought your politeness meant you didn't understand the game. They were wrong on all three. You understood the game so well you let them think they were winning. You let them believe they were the predator. You let them build the case file against themselves in your mind, piece by piece, night after night. And now the file is complete. That's why they're wide awake. They're not afraid of you stabbing them in an alley. That's too simple, too romantic. No, they're afraid you understand exactly where to hurt them without laying a finger on them. Reputation, money, secrets, relationships, social oxygen. You don't need a weapon, you just need timing. People think revenge is about anger. Amateur theory. Revenge is about clarity. You can't scare someone you don't understand. You spent years being forced to watch their patterns, their tells, their hypocrisy, how they talk big about mental health and kindness, while privately enjoying every chance to push you closer to the edge. They know you've seen them without the costume, and nothing terrifies a coward more than the possibility that the audience remembers who they were when the mask slipped. They're not afraid you'll do something insane. They're afraid you'll do something justified. That's the new nightmare, that you finally realized you were never crazy, that the things you felt were real. The disrespect happened. The manipulation happened. The betrayal happened. They gaslit you so hard they almost believed their own lies. Then you changed. You got quiet in a different way. Not the broken kind. The calculating kind. They pretended not to notice. Now they can't stop noticing. See, ordinary people don't lie awake thinking about the people they treated well. They sleep like babies. No fear, no replay, no audit of their behavior. The mind only reopens the files where the crimes were never fully processed. The human conscience is selective. It pretends to be dead until it hears footsteps coming back down the hall. That's you, the footsteps. You're not a monster in their story. Monsters are exciting. You're worse. You're a consequence. You're the invoice they hoped got lost in the mail. You're the, that was years ago, why is this still an issue, turned into walking, breathing proof that time doesn't clean blood off the hands, just off the memory. They thought they buried you in embarrassment. They didn't notice you were taking root. This is their real fear, that the version of you they created is no longer in the cage they built. They mocked you into isolation. They pushed you into obsession. They trained you to overthink every single detail. And now all that mental energy is no longer aimed at surviving them. It's aimed at understanding them. And once you understand someone, you own them. Most people have never met someone who truly understands them and doesn't need them. That combination is terrifying, because love makes people patient. Dependence makes people forgiving. But detachment is surgical. Detached people don't argue, they don't plead, they don't beg. They don't write long paragraphs explaining why they're hurt. They just adjust the variables in your life until gravity takes care of the rest. You can hear it in their voice now. That tight little laugh when your name comes up. Oh, yeah, I wonder how they're doing. No, you don't. You wonder what they're planning. Human beings don't fear evil. They fear memory. That's the trick. They can convince themselves you were dramatic, emotional, sensitive, but they can't erase the fact that you were there, that you saw it, that you remember the way they smiled when you broke, that you remember exactly who switched sides when things got messy, that you remember who shrugged and said, "It's none of my business," as if neutrality wasn't a choice. Neutral people love to think they're innocent. They sleep the worst, because deep down, they know they didn't have to stab you. They just had to step over you. That's what haunts them. The realization that they don't fear your cruelty. They fear your accuracy. They fear the day you stop protecting their reputation with your silence. Guilt is when you realize you did wrong. Fear is when you realize wrong remembers your name. They'll frame it as paranoia, of course. I doubt they even think about me anymore. That's the bedtime story they tell themselves. But then, why did they look you up online last week? Why do they still have old screenshots, just in case? Why do they keep rehearsing imaginary arguments in the shower? Why do they bring up your name with that little disclaimer? "We're cool now," as if saying it makes it true. People don't build defenses against ghosts, only against witnesses. You know what keeps a bully up at night? The thought that the person they broke finally realized they're not broken, they're dangerous. Not because they're violent, but because they no longer care about playing nice. That's the real horror. Someone who has nothing left to prove, nothing to gain from your approval, and nothing to lose by telling the truth. You were harmless when you wanted their validation. You became hazardous when you stopped. They taught you something important while they were laughing. They taught you that rules are optional for them. Policies bend for them. Exceptions appear for them. The system bends in the direction of whoever is loud, connected, or cruel enough to push. You watched, you learned. Now you understand the structure. And nothing scares the architects more than someone who knows how the building is wired. They're not scared you'll start a fire. They're scared you'll pull the right plug. Do you know why they always say, "Let's not drag up the past"? Because the past isn't past for them. It's unsecured evidence. It's unpaid interest. It's a debt clock still ticking somewhere in the dark. They want closure that requires you to forget. They call it moving on, because ignoring what I did doesn't sound as healthy on a podcast. Their insomnia is just their conscience trying to send them a notification. They can't sleep because every scenario ends with you finally deciding to stop protecting them, telling the story, showing the proof, letting their carefully curated social mask crack under the weight of reality. They're not worried about lies. Liars are easy to fight. They're worried you have receipts that look boring, specific, and undeniable. The truth is never dramatic enough to ignore. You want to know the funniest part. They still think they're the main character. Even in the nightmare where you show up, they frame it as, "What if they attack me?" As if you spend your nights drafting speeches about them. No, that's their job. They overestimated their importance in your life and underestimated their impact on your mind. They were a chapter for you. You were a mirror for them, one they can't put down. Most people don't really fear violence. They fear exposure. They fear sudden clarity. They fear that one day the people around them will connect the dots and realize, wait, you're not a good person. You're just well behaved in public. They fear that you, the one who saw the unedited footage, will finally leak it. You don't even have to speak. You just have to stop covering. That's what they pushed too far. The assumption that you'd keep swallowing the truth for their comfort. That you'd keep playing the quiet, understanding one. The emotionally mature one. The one who gets it. But here's the twist: once you fully understand someone, empathy doesn't always deepen. Sometimes it dies. Understanding can cure attachment, not just create it. Their problem is simple. They trained you to read between the lines, to anticipate danger, to sense shifts in tone, tiny changes in facial expressions, sudden distance in conversations. You had to learn those skills to survive them. And now those same skills are free to focus on everyone else. Bosses, lovers, friends, strangers. You see what people are long before they start explaining who they are. They created someone who can't be marketed to anymore. Do you know how inconvenient that is for society? A person who doesn't respond to shame the usual way. You're supposed to crumble when someone calls you selfish, dramatic, ungrateful. You're supposed to run back into the box and apologize for making others uncomfortable. But when you've already been vilified, when you've already been painted as the problem, something odd happens. The fear of being misunderstood stops working. You stop negotiating your sanity with people who profit from your confusion. That's when they felt it, that little chill. The day you didn't explain yourself. The day you didn't justify. The day you didn't send the paragraph. The day you saw everything clearly and just adjusted your distance. Pulled your energy back. Stopped warning them. Stopped announcing your boundaries. You didn't need a farewell message. You just went quiet with a different temperature. That's not closure. That's a countdown they can't see. They don't know what you know now. That human relationships are mostly transactions wrapped in feeling. Give, take, withdraw, invest, exploit. They taught you that. They demanded loyalty they never intended to return. They wanted access without responsibility. They wanted forgiveness without accountability. And they got it for a while. Now they know you understand the exchange rate. They can feel it when you walk into a room. The power shift. The way you're not seeking permission anymore. You're not trying to be nice. You're being accurate. You don't jump to fill silences. You don't rush to make everyone feel comfortable. You let people sit with their tension, their discomfort, their awareness that you know exactly what happened and chose not to forget. You're not punishing them. You're just not protecting them. That's what keeps them awake. The idea that one day you'll stop resisting the temptation to tell the truth. That you'll stop worrying about how it makes you look and start enjoying how it makes them squirm. That you'll finally lean into the reputation they already gave you and wear it like a uniform. Difficult, cold, petty, vengeful. They spent years stitching those labels onto your back. Imagine their faces when you turn around and wear them on your chest. They created the villain they're now praying never shows up. But here's the real horror: you don't have to show up. You just have to exist. Every time they mistreat someone new, there's that tiny voice. What if this one becomes like them? Like you. The one who learned. The one who adapted. The one who stopped needing their good opinion like oxygen. You are the worst case scenario in their moral math. Proof that victims don't always stay small. You're the cautionary tale they'll never admit out loud. Funny thing about being pushed too far. People think it turns you into a rage-fueled mess. But the real shift is quieter, colder, more methodical. You stop being shocked by bad behavior. You start predicting it. You stop expecting apology. You start expecting patterns. You stop asking, why would they do that? And start asking, what do they think they gain from this? That's not trauma. That's strategy. They didn't break you. They forced you to study them. Now they're stuck with the result. Someone who doesn't worship stability because they've seen how fragile it really is. Someone who doesn't buy into social rules because they've watched those rules bend for the right faces. Someone who knows that most authority is costume and most morality is branding. You can't scare a person with exile once they've been exiled already. You can't control someone with silence once they've learned to enjoy their own company. They pushed you out of the circle. You built your own map. They still hope you want back in. That's their comfort. The belief that deep down, you're still craving their approval. That you're planning some big dramatic return where they get to play magnanimous, forgiving heroes. That's why they love redemption arcs in movies. They want to believe every monster secretly just wants to be loved. Here's the twist they'll never see coming: you're not coming back. You're not plotting to re-enter their story. You're not waiting for closure, apology, recognition. You already outgrew the entire state. Their dream is that one day they'll see you and you'll still be carrying their memory like a wound. The real nightmare, seeing you walk past them like they're a closed chapter in a boring book. You don't hate them anymore. You just don't need them to exist. That's what really keeps them awake. Not the fear of your revenge, but the proof of your indifference. The fact that they spent years building themselves up in your mind as the judge, the gatekeeper, the essential figure. And now, if they vanished tomorrow, your life would simply continue. That's the part that gnaws at them at 3 a.m. The realization that they weren't the villain of your story. They weren't even that important, just loud. The last thing they pushed too far wasn't your patience. It was your belief in the illusion. The illusion that people in power are responsible. The illusion that friends are loyal. The illusion that love guarantees safety. Once those illusions crack, you don't become evil. You become immune. Immune to manipulation. Immune to flattery. Immune to the tricks that worked on you before. and people who can't be controlled are always labeled dangerous. So now they lie there, eyes open, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince themselves they're over it, that you're over it, that everything is fine, that the past is irrelevant, that what happened wasn't that bad, that you're too sensitive, that they were doing their best. Stories, 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 little lullabies for rotten consciences. And yet they still check the door twice, because somewhere deep down, they know there's a version of you that no longer asks, why did they do this to me? But what will I do with what they did? That's the question they can't afford you to answer. That's the question echoing in the dark hallways of their nervous system every time a floorboard creaks or a notification pings. They're not afraid you'll become a monster. They're afraid you'll become accurate. That's what happens when people push someone too far. They expect madness. They don't expect precision. They expect screaming. They don't expect silence. They expect chaos. They don't expect strategy. But pushed too far, people don't waste time vandalizing your car at midnight. They rebuild themselves in daylight and let your own history vandalize you. You did the damage. They just stopped hiding the mirror. So no, they're not awake because of what you might do to them in some theatrical explosion of rage. They're awake because of what they already did to you, and the calm, terrifying possibility that you finally understand exactly who they are, and finally understand you never needed them in the first place. They can't sleep because somewhere, deep in the part of the brain that still believes in consequences, a quiet little voice keeps whispering the one sentence they'll spend the rest of their life trying not to hear. You pushed the wrong person too far, but let's not pretend you're innocent in all this hymn. You let them. You swallowed your words. You played nice. You kept giving them access long after you saw the pattern. That's the part that keeps you awake, isn't it? Not just what they did, but what you tolerated. That little disgust you feel toward them. There's a matching one aimed at yourself. Beautiful, isn't it? That's the moment you stop wanting justice and start wanting balance. And balance is never clean. They wanted you broken, not educated. They wanted you dependent, not observant. They wanted you grateful for crumbs while they feasted. You learned the script. Make yourself small, laugh it off, say, "It's fine," while your stomach turned. And now the joke's on them. Because once a person realizes they participated in their own mistreatment, they stop negotiating. They stop asking why and start asking, what now? That's when things get interesting. Regret is gasoline. Clarity is the match. Think about the games they played. The little power moves. Showing up late to prove you weren't a priority. Leaving messages on read just long enough to make you doubt yourself. Giving compliments with tiny needles hidden inside. You're so strong. Translation. You'll survive whatever I do to you. You're so understanding. Translation. You'll swallow my disrespect and call it compassion. They trained you with every line, every silence, every half-hearted apology. And now they wonder why you don't flinch anymore. Here's the ugly secret they never believed you'd leave. That's why they pushed so hard. Nobody invests that much effort in breaking someone they think might disappear. They assumed you were permanent, stable, predictable emotional furniture. Always there, always available, always forgiving, a safe punching bag, a bottomless resource. And then one day you weren't. You didn't announce it. You just stopped being their favorite toy. You want to know why that memory keeps scratching at their brain? Because they didn't notice the exact moment they lost you. There wasn't a big fight with dramatic music. No slamming doors, no cinematic monologue, just tiny withdrawals, a slower reply here, a shorter answer there, a canceled favor, a boundary spoken once instead of swallowed. They didn't feel the earthquake. They just woke up and the landscape had changed. Control doesn't vanish loudly, it leaks. And now they watch you from a distance, online, through mutual friends, through that one account they swear you don't know about. They analyze every move, trying to decode your silence like it's some hostile code. Are they mad at me? Do they still care? Was it really that bad? They hold little trials in their head where they get to be the misunderstood hero. Whole courtroom dramas acted out under the blanket at 2 a.m. Funny thing, no jury ever convicts them in their own fantasies. But reality isn't interested in their script. Reality is boring, blunt, and permanent. Reality is you moving differently. choosing differently, answering differently. Every time you don't jump when they poke, that's another crack in their comfort. Every time you don't rush to explain, that's another fracture in their certainty. Every time you smile and walk away instead of arguing, that's another nail in the coffin of the character they wrote for you. You're not playing hard to get, you're playing hard to manipulate. Here's the part they'll never say out loud. A small, twisted, trembling part of them is impressed. They didn't think you had it in you. They thought the worst thing you could do was cry. They thought the most dangerous move you had was a meltdown. They never imagined your real power was detachment backed by memory. They underestimated their student. Now the exam is open book and the book is their behavior. They're praying you don't start reading out loud. So here we are. Them lying awake, bargaining with ghosts. You wide awake, bargaining with yourself. They ask, what if they come for me? You ask, do I even care enough to move? That's the final insult. Not revenge, not exposure, not confrontation. The final insult is indifference sharpened into a blade, not to stab them, just to cut ties so cleanly that they never get the satisfaction of knowing which moment finally did it. You don't owe them that clarity. Let them choke on the question. And if you're wondering whether they deserve what's coming, nothing's coming. There's no grand plan, no dramatic act 3. Just a steady redistribution of power inside your head. They gradually lose importance. They lose access. They lose the luxury of your silence. You don't need to destroy them. You just live in a way that proves they never finished the job. That's why they stare at the ceiling, replaying everything at night. They finally know who they pushed too far.